Building trust in a relationship is like lifting weights. The more weights you lift, the stronger you will be. The same goes for relationships. The more time and effort you put into relationships, the stronger and more trustworthy those relationships will be. Now, one may ask, how does trust grow in people's relationships? There are many different ways to form trust, but the individuals who spend a great amount of time together and overcome conflicts together form a bond of trust that is rarely broken. We see this in The Boys in the Boat by Daniel James Brown, 10 Ways to Build Trust in a Relationship by Heather Craig, The Captain's Story, A Bond of Brotherhood Forged in War by Chase Millsap, and in my own life. Let's dive into The Boys in the Boat by Daniel James Brown. The book is based on the life of Joe Rance. Joe grew up in Spokane, Washington with his family. When Joe was 4, his mother died of throat cancer. After his mom passed away, Joe's father sent him away by train to live with his relatives in Pennsylvania. After about a year, Joe's relatives sent him back to live with his father in Washington. Joe's father remarried, and Joe and his stepmother did not get along. She ended up kicking Joe out of the house when he was 15 years old. Joe entered the workforce after he was kicked out of the family. He knew he would need to save up money so he could attend the University of Washington. Joe planned on joining the rowing team because he would be granted a part-time job that would help him pay for the rest of college. Joe did not know many freshmen on the rowing team, but his closest friends were Don Hume and Roger Morris. They always had each other's back when the times were tough. On the first day of practice, all the men were introduced to freshman coach Tom Bowles and varsity coach Al Ulbrichtson. On page 22, Coach Bowles emphasizes rowing as a true team sport when he says, each young man would also have to be able to put aside his own personal ambitions. He'd need to pull, not just for himself, not just for glory, but for the other boys in the boat. Joe would have to surrender all his dreams and ambitions and fully commit to rowing. He will have to put his full trust in his teammates if he wants to reach high levels of success in the sport. Joe and his crew reached great amounts of success in their freshman season. They won every race, including the freshman national championship. There was a lot of talk behind Joe's crew on whether they would become the top varsity boat the following season. Even now that they had stopped rowing, their breathing was synchronized, and for a brief, fragile moment, it seemed to Joe as if all of them were all a part of a single thing, something alive with breath and spirit of its own. Brown, page 63. Joe describes a moment at practice where the whole crew felt the trust between each other. They felt like one unit while they rowed, and they would need this to continue if they wanted to row in the Olympics the following year. Joe and his crew continued to row at a high level, but there were stretches where they would struggle. This never affected the crew, and they would continue to win most of their races. By the time it got to Joe's senior year, the coaches became more adamant and strict. It was the year of the Olympics, and Coach Ulbrichtson wanted to be the first U.S. college crew to win the Olympics. Joe's crew ended up winning the varsity national championship, and they would advance to the Olympic trials. Joe and his crew felt the pressure and nervousness leading up to the race. They knew that if they rowed together and trusted each other, as they did in the past, they would become victorious. In those final few meters, Joe and the boys had finally forged the prize they had sought all season, the prize Joe had sought nearly all his life. Each entirely given himself up to being part of something larger and more powerful and more important than himself. Brown, page 207. Joe and his teammates rowed a flawless race, and they qualified themselves for the Olympics in Berlin, Germany. Each crew member did their job, and the time and effort the crew had put in has paid off. The crew's trust and relationships will be put to the test when they compete in the Olympics. To find out if Joe and his crew can win at the biggest stage, you will have to read the rest of The Boys in the Boat. Now let's see how trust is important in modern situations. My first modern situation is 10 Ways to Build Trust in a Relationship from Positive Psychology by Heather Craig. Craig highlights the main points of building trust, which include commitment and honesty. Building trust is not without risk. It involves allowing both you and others taking risks to prove trustworthiness. In relationships, opportunities to gain trust present themselves. By being committed, the relationship can continue to grow and strengthen over time. Communication is also key to maintaining a healthy relationship. Having clear and honest communication can help prevent conflicts and setbacks that can damage trust already built. Let's look at another modern situation and see how trust played a factor in relationships. The Captain's Story, A Bond of Brotherhood Forged in War, from National Geographic by Chase Millsap, is about a story of Millsap in the Iraq War. Millsap was a soldier in the U.S. Army, and he was deployed in Iraq during the Iraq War. He was stationed at an outpost in Iraq to protect Iraqi citizens from the harms of war. Millsap was stationed with soldiers from Iraq, and he did not completely trust them. But one day, shots were fired on the outpost Millsap was stationed at. One Iraqi soldier, which Millsap called Chief, tackled Millsap and saved him from the gunshots. One bullet flew past Millsap's head, and without Chief tackling him, Millsap would have died. This event formed an unbreakable bond between the two soldiers. To this day, Millsap and Chief still have a strong relationship with each other. They have kept in touch, and now they both visit each other to catch up. This situation shows how saving actions can help form the strongest bonds of trust in a relationship. We can see how trust can play an important factor, especially in The Boys in the Boat and my two modern situations. Trust has also played a factor in my own life. I am sure most of you already know, but this is my brother Calvin. Growing up, Calvin and I were the brothers who would always fight. Yeah, we still got along with each other, but there was always some sort of beef between us. We did not have the same interests, and this led to many conflicts and arguments. One of our biggest conflicts was when he decided he was going to go out for tennis and not football. I tried my best to try and talk him into playing football, but he wouldn't budge. He was committed to playing tennis. Our relationship changed when he got to high school. We found out that we have a lot more in common than we thought. High school has helped us grow closer together, and our relationship has strengthened ever since. And sadly, I can now admit that tennis is now one of my favorite hobbies. The time and experiences Calvin and I have spent together over the past couple of years has helped us form trust that we will have for the rest of our lives. Today we talked about the importance of trust in relationships. In The Boys in the Boat by Daniel James Brown, we learned that putting trust in one another can help lead to success. In 10 Ways to Build Trust in a Relationship by Heather Craig, we learned that commitment and honesty are two key factors that lead to building trust. In The Captain's Story, A Bond of Brotherhood Forged in War by Chase Millsap, we saw how sacrifice can form the ultimate bond of trust between strangers. And in my own life, we saw how trust in relationships grow by accepting and supporting each other's interests. So remember, if you are trying to build up trust in a relationship, you will have to put forth time and effort.